we're getting up there, and then the meeting's being live streamed away. And let me share the screen. Now our book. Hey, we're getting up there, and then now I hear myself. The meeting's being live streamed away. And let me share the screen. Oh, yeah, okay. I don't know if you I don't know why it does that. It doesn't make sense to me. It seems like a flaw in their system, but who knows? Certainly not me. I don't know much of anything. So
We're all clueless here.
that's right.
Not to make any exceptions.
That's right.
How could us amoebas on the bottom of the pond understand the cosmos, right?
Exactly. And you know what? Here we go. And there we go. Now we're live on, hopefully, on everything. Live. We are among the living. Always think about that. Do you ever remember that movie Poltergeist?
I'm not sure if I ever saw that one. I know of it, but I don't think I ever saw it.
It's
I'm never big on horror flicks. I figure I've got enough to handle with the one I made up.
well, that is quite true. That is quite true. Yeah, I think I saw it when I was, because it was real popular at a certain time and everybody was going to see it. I personally did not like it at all. I didn't enjoy the premise of it. Was that somehow or the other, the uh, the spirits of people long dead, come out and kidnap a little girl, bring her into the spirit world, and then they have to go through all the things to try to get her back. And they get this psychic woman who speaks with the dead and all, and she comes and does some sort of a thing to get the little girl back, and it's just horrifying if you're a parent. If you are a mother and you're watching a movie about a child getting kidnapped by spirits and taken into a spirit realm, and you spend the whole movie trying to find your kid, that's horror. I mean, that was absolute horror. So the rest of it, I didn't care about all the other stuff that was going on, that anyway. So how are
As
you
you're saying that,
go ahead?
as you're saying that, I was just thinking, well, I'm always trying to bring it back to the course and what the purpose of our conversation. And I was thinking, well, what would the course's metaphor be for that? Well, losing one's children would be like God losing one of his creations, and to us, it's not only possible but inevitable that we lose our creations, we lose the ones we love, we lose what's our treasure, or what's important and meaningful to us, because we threw it away, and we forgot that we threw it away, or we dreamt we threw it away. And from the perspective of Holy Spirit, representing God's silent unacknowledgement of that a crazy idea, nothing happened. It's impossible. But our minds are so powerful. Yeah, we can hold our thumb up and in at arm's length and in the sky and blot out the sun or the moon, but doesn't mean that they went away. It just means that we're choosing not to receive that light on our retinas.
Exactly. And it's all about choices. That's
Mhm.
really, the whole point of A Course in Miracles is to choose again,
Mhm.
to recognize that you have a choice. I have a mind, I have a kingdom I must rule, and I have a choice about how I'm going to do it. And so yeah, the course is it's the answer to all the horror movies, because and we like to scare ourselves, and that's part of why we're here. We like we like to be scared. That's why we go on the roller coaster. This is why we go on the we go out and hunt or go to war. I mean, not because we enjoy, um, hurting other people or hurting ourselves. There is a certain amount of, of control that we think we have when we, go to war, to either fight for or fight against or whatever. And but it's because we like to be scared.
And
That's
the
part of it.
course would suggest that it's a petulant dream. It's a childish nightmare of an authority problem. We're doing the grand projection of the grand illusion, reaction formation. It's like, well, I don't have this, so I'm going to pretend that I have this power to make myself scared. Well, or to make myself a self, more importantly.
Yeah.
Because the little s self is totally fabricated, and on the deepest level we know that's true, and so that's, if there was such a thing as a scary thought, which there isn't in truth, that would be it. That we could separate from what we love, which is our creator and each other and our real all-inclusive self.
There. Oh, I muted myself. Yeah,
No.
exactly. Exactly. And so, yeah, the insanity of thinking, that we can hurt ourselves or destroy ourselves, or that, that we actually have the power to undo something God did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really it, isn't it? Usurp the power of God.
Mm-hmm.
So,
We
all
think we
right.
did it. We think we pulled it off.
No, we think we did, but it didn't make us happy, and it didn't give us anything. We didn't really get anything up from it other than fear and madness. So, there we go. I mean, escape into madness is exactly what we did here.
Yeah.
So,
Should we pick up where we left off?
yeah,
Okay.
you can
I have us
say it.
reading Absence from Felicity, the story of Helen Schuckman and her scribing of A Course in Miracles by Kenneth Wapnick, PhD. And we, in the print version, are in about the middle of the page 127 in the edition I have, which is, what edition is that? Let me just look real quick, see if I can see. It might be the second printing, December 1991. So whatever version or edition that is. Do you have yes, you probably have the numbers there on your screen.
Yeah, if you're reading from a Kindle, oh, let's see. I just unscrewed myself here.
Oh, okay.
Because okay, there we go. I was looking for it. Let's just say we're, why can't I move that without making it go away? It doesn't matter.
I
No.
think I can see it in the bottom of your screen that you're sharing, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, we'll do it next week.
Yeah,
For people that need to
exactly.
catch up with the digital.
We'll know where we're at. Yeah. So
should I
and
pick up where we left off?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. I have us at, I'm going to back up one paragraph. And this is Ken's comments for a couple of paragraphs. After this, excuse me, maybe need a swig water. There, just clear my throat. Okay. After the scribing was completed, Helen and Bill prepared a copy of the manuscript for Hugh Lynn. This is Hugh Lynn Casey. And so we're talking about the Edgar Casey Association, ARE, or Association for Research and Enlightenment. This, incidentally, was the manuscript I first saw, which, this is Ken speaking now, which Helen, Bill, and I always referred to as the Hugh Lynn version. And then he continues, there were some isolated experiences of that summer, all positive, that are worth quoting here as well. One set of experiences reflects the growing awareness of Helen in joining with others and its obvious importance in the journey back to God. Incidentally, this kind of experience, with which Helen was becoming increasingly familiar, was markedly different from Helen's more usual and powerful feelings of separation. And here's Helen's quote now. Several times that summer, I felt something like the, quote, subway experience, unquote, of years before, although with much less intensity. It generally took place in a crowd of people for whom I could feel a brief but powerful affinity. One took place on a warm evening when Louis and I were walking along a crowded resort boardwalk in Atlantic City. See her letter to Bill, page 156, in brackets from Ken. And then, let's see, there's a footnote here of what was actually the footnote about the Hugh Lynn version. I'm going to read that before I turn the page at the bottom of 127. This appellation should not be taken to suggest that there were other versions of the course. It referred only to the latest typesetting in the manuscript. So that was Ken's commentary on the Hugh Lynn version, in quotes. Okay, so Helen continues. A sudden sense of deep emotional closeness to everyone there swept over me with a clear and certain recognition that we were all making the same journey together to a common goal. Another took place when Bill, Louis, and I were sitting in a darkened theater. Sitting in the darkness, I was suddenly aware of an intense inner light that began in my chest, growing increasingly strong and encompassing until it seemed to radiate throughout the whole theater and include everyone in it. My awareness of the light and the peace and joy that accompanied it lasted for some 10 minutes. It was so strong that I could hardly believe no one else noticed it. And then the italics that are noted here is, and include everyone in it. Can put that in italics. And also the first sentence too. A sudden sense of deep emotional closeness to everyone there swept over me with a clear and certain recognition that we were all making the same journey together to a common goal. Very integral, fundamental idea to the course's non-dual metaphysics. Huh? Do you want to read from there, Lynn?
Sure. All right. So, and yeah, that's very interesting that she had that feeling of closeness or oneness.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's the kind of thing that, I would definitely cherish, forever, anytime that I've ever had that kind of experience, and I could, name them and tell you all about them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty big deal to suddenly have that experience of what Jesus is talking about here. Okay, so Ken continues. A somewhat similar incident occurred later on in southern France, which I have already presented in chapter 1. A complete different set of images involved pictures of a chalice. A completely different set of images involved pictures of a chalice. And I guess this is Helen's writing about it. Sometimes gold and sometimes silver, but always with a bright light shining on it. At first, these images frightened me because I associated them with sacrifice and loss, but I was silently but completely assured that they were really symbols of great joy. I did not actually experience much emotion related to them, however, but at least I ceased to be afraid of them. And then Ken continues. In A Course in Miracles, the chalice is used as a symbol of the atonement, the Course's term for the Holy Spirit's correction of the belief in the sin of separation. The term, and therefore its symbol of the chalice, is deliberately set against the traditional view of atonement, which is that God demands suffering and sacrifice as a payment back for our sin against him. The chalice at the Last Supper and Jesus' supposed prayer during the quote-unquote agony in the Garden of Gethsemane, that his Father, quote, remove this cup, unquote, in parens of his sacrificial death on the cross, in parens, from him, Luke 22:42. Thus have for 2,000 years represented for Christians God's plan of suffering and sacrifice. This was the meaning of Helen's fear. Helen's interest in the chalice surfaced again during the summer of 1973, as will be discussed in part 3. And I have to think about it because, when Helen was a little girl, she would go to the Catholic Church with her nanny, but she wasn't allowed to actually enter the church. She could only stay in the vestibule. And so, but she peeked through the cracks in the door, she could see what was happening. And a big part of the Catholic Mass is involved with this chalice. And, if you've ever been to a Catholic Mass, they bring out this chalice and they do all these prayers and raise it up, and and everybody says something, they raise it up again, and they do all this stuff with this chalice, and then they, in it is supposed to be the blood of Christ. They're they're transmuting wine into blood, transmuting these little crackers into flesh, and reenacting the Last Supper celebration. So this chalice, which I'm sure was like, because I'm just even thinking about it now, every church I've ever been in, it's beautiful, it's like ornate and gold, and the light that's shining on it is really, I could just see this picture.
Not a Dixie cup, basically, right?
Not a Dixie cup, no. It is a very special thing, and kept in a very special little place and locked up and all that kind of stuff. So it's a big deal. So, when it's saying, when it says in the Bible that Jesus asked to have this cup taken away from him, that he didn't want to have to drink of it, he didn't want to have to die. Of course, we all, know, who have been studying A Course in Miracles, that they could never have heard him say any of those things, because the apostles were all drunk and sleeping, and he was in the garden basically by himself, having a conversation with his Father. So
and even that account is just a whole lot of
yeah,
assumption about what the historical figure in a dream of space-time may or may not have actually done or experienced.
exactly. So it's all made up, but we have a vivid picture of it, and can absolutely, see in our minds all these things that, Jesus was supposedly doing during that time. But so the chalice is really an important figure, and in fact, the Holy Grail is that chalice. And so anytime you've seen anything or movies about Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail or whatever,
I'm thinking Monty Python with the coconuts
Monty
clapping
Python, I knew
together.
you were thinking Monty Python. That's why I said Indiana Jones. We already have one. You have a grail? Yes,
Oh yeah, that whole thing. Silly English knickets.
Knickets.
Yeah,
I
okay.
fart in your general direction.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh gosh, yes.
Go away, or I shall taunt you some more. Anyway, now you got me down that rabbit. But anyway, yeah. So the whole idea that everybody's searching for this thing, and this thing has such historic meaning and such meaning. And so, when Helen is seeing this vision of this grail, I'm sure she is, she doesn't know what to think. Because she didn't have Monty Python, so all she
So
had
the
was
levity wasn't as readily available. Right?
exactly. But maybe Camelot. I think that Broadway's thing of Camelot was on, and that was what that whole, the whole idea anyway of searching.
You mean that wasn't about buying a used camel?
No, it was
No?
not.
Oh, okay.
Camelot,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
New
I
word.
misunderstood.
You did. Anyway, you can understand. You can stand under all that if you want to.
Okay.
Misunderstood. So anyway, okay. So so that that I'm going to just go back a couple sentences. The chalice at the Last Supper and Jesus's supposed prayer during the agony in the Garden of Gethsemane, that his Father remove this cup of his sacrificial death on the cross from him, thus have for 2,000 years represented for Christians God's plan of suffering and sacrifice. This was the meaning of Helen's fear. Helen's interest in the chalice surfaced again during the summer of 1973, as we'll discuss in part 3. There was one time when Helen remembered asking specifically for an experience to cheer her up while she was feeling a little bit low. Isn't this sweet? Jesus, give me a little something here and make me feel happy. So the answer came in the form of a picture of a plant nursery with very young plants in neat rows, carefully labeled and apparently tended with great care. Next to the plants was a large watering can. There were no weeds or dead leaves there, and the plants were green and obviously healthy. The picture meant nothing to me, and I found it mildly irritating. And much good that is, I grumbled. What's so helpful about that? Look where it's growing, said the voice patiently and gently. But what does it mean? I asked, still indignant. Look where it's growing, repeated the voice slowly and distinctly. Oh, all right, I said, somewhat sulkily. Then I looked at the picture more carefully. The plant nursery was completely surrounded by a bleak, lifeless desert. Only the little area in which the plants were growing was moist and green. And now that it's finally started, said the voice, you will go on watering it, won't you? Oh, this is cool. Yeah. I was quite overcome, but I promised I would try. And so she became overcome when she recognized that that little garden was growing in the desert and that she was the one that was supposed to be watering it. But I just think it's so cute. I mean, it's honestly that this relationship that Helen had with Jesus was like, give me something to make me feel a little bit better. And then she has this vision and she's like, well, that's not it. I don't feel any better at all now.
Actually, and not only was it an encouraging one, showing that the life was flourishing, thriving, and growing, but also showing the importance of recognizing the contrast between the two thought systems of metaphorically the growth and the nourishment and the care that the little oasis of greenery represented among the vast desert, a place where starved and thirsty creatures come to die, as of course refers to the ego, metaphorically. And it wasn't lost on me when we moved back to the desert, having lived in the high desert of Colorado, and then moved to the Oregon coast. And I think, oh, gee, now we're moving away from the desert. Now we're moving back to the desert. And I was thinking, a lot of times in my more lucid moments, I'll realize it's all desert here. I mean, this whole world is really desert. It not on a physical level, but metaphorically, because we all feel like we're isolated and starved and emaciated relative to the quenching of our real thirst for a true connection with not only with each other but with our Creator that we've never left, but because our minds are so powerful, we've dreamt we've left. So we're having desert dreams, and that's it. And then kind of tying it back into what you just read about, remove this cup. I was thinking, that in the hearsay of the whole biblical story, and I'm sure some things got through, and there's some lovely phrases in the Bible that seem to have managed to emerge relatively unscathed, particularly the prodigal son story. I think that one's a great example, but so much of it is a mixed bag. And one of the ideas that I think really the Christian Bible tends to reinforce is the idea that Jesus suffered and had basically didn't want the cup, meaning the chalice, and that like you were just explaining, and with Ken's commentary as well, that's the real chalice is the unlimited supply of the peace, the love, the true joy, the unchanging tranquility of mind that is everyone's birthright, and in fact our total inheritance that's present all the time, except we just like holding out our thumb again against the sun, we think we've blotted it out. We think we've denied it. and our minds can seem to deny it. They can't change the inheritance. They can't make that go away. So, I really, always kind of question, just like I think I've mentioned a few times in Baird Spalding's book, The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, where Jesus appears to this party and explains, when when I was there, I was terribly misquoted and as saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? When I really said was, my God, you have never forsaken me, nor could you ever forsake me or any of your children, something like that. And it just changes the whole thing. I mean, it's like a totally fundamental ontological foundational difference between the two thought systems, isn't it?
It is, and it's just pretty amazing how even today in this world, we still imagine that this person Jesus was walking around saying and doing things, and we have so many different stories. For instance, I'm sure that you probably know that in the Quran, there's a lot of talk about Jesus as one of the central figures in the Quran.
Oh, really? I did
His
not know that, actually.
Mary had, yeah, there's a whole chapter about Mary, his mother, in the Quran,
Hmm.
and there are stories about Jesus's childhood, and it's just really interesting
Oh,
that
really? I had
Jesus
no
is
idea.
such a, yeah,
Huh.
he's a pretty big figure in there.
Hmm.
Um, but
Does it talk about Mary Magdalene? I'd just be curious.
I'm not sure about
Yeah.
that. I haven't
Since in
because
Gironard's books, they mention Mary Magdalene, Jesus, and Buddha all kind of
I know.
graduating about the same time in that lifetime.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Because I think it's all hearsay. Just like,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a story in there that when he was a little child, people came. It was on the Sabbath, and people went to his to Joseph and said, "Hey, you got to do something about your kid. He's over here doing crazy stuff." And they go over, and what he's doing, he's making birds out of clay and breathing life into them, and they're flying away. And they're like, you can't do that on the Sabbath. I mean, nothing about him doing that, but he was
There's got to
doing
be
it on
a
the
local
Sabbath.
ordinance here somewhere, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff about Jesus's childhood, and of course the Quran said that he really wasn't crucified, and that someone else was crucified instead. And
It
there's
was
a
Brian, right?
yeah,
We
yeah,
know that from another Monty Python film.
that's right. It's from another Monty Python, Brian. Exactly. So anyway, back to the desert. And yeah, because I live in the desert too,
Hmm.
that there is a certain um appeal to it, and a certain I think there's just no silence like the silence you find in the desert. And I mean, stillness is just pretty I mean, it's what's happening there.
Well,
So
that was one thing I did notice when we moved back from the Oregon coast. Is like, first night or two, it's like, I don't hear the ocean. Wow. Like you say, it really is a lot quieter when you don't hear 24/7 the surf,
yep, or
Yep.
the wind blowing through the trees, or that
Right, right.
there's just so many things that
Yep.
just is so very quiet. And obviously Jesus went into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, and had all of his actually became realized or awakened or whatever during that time. Well, that's my thought anyway, because when he came back, then he started, his teachings. And but the desert was pivotal. And now we have people fighting over that very same desert. And it's there's it's very symbolic to the people of the world.
Because we have
So
the whole idea that there could be sacred and profane places. We have the
yes.
belief in differences is crucial to warfare. You can't have any kind of conflict
That's
or
right.
any kind of threat without differences, right?
Exactly. And that's why we as Course in Miracles students really have to keep our minds clear
Mhm.
about, this is, there's nothing about, the differences here. The sameness is the only thing that really matters about any of this.
Yep.
And these are all the same people. It's the same, I mean,
Yep. We're
these are
all
the
the same
people
here.
I can just feel in love, completely and wholly. And that's what brings about the peace. It has nothing to do with negotiating over how much of the desert do I get to have. It really is about recognizing or finding peace in the sameness of what we are. So I'll continue reading. Ken then says, the symbol of deserts changing into gardens again is found in the Course, notably in the section The Little Garden, which is one of my favorites,
Mhm.
in text chapter 18, section 8. And in this beautiful passage from the workbook, borrowed in part from Portia's famous speech from The Merchant of Venice, here again, Shakespeare shows up. Um, and here is a quote from the Course. Miracles fall like drops of healing rain from heaven on a dry and dusty world where starved and thirsty creatures come to die. Now they have water. Now the world is green. And everywhere the signs of life spring up to show that what is born can never die, for what has life has immortality. And that's from workbook lesson 13. And or not lesson 13. I can never figure this that
I think
workbook
that's
part.
the 13th what is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
That's
Oh,
probably
then
what is
that's
a miracle? I
correct.
think that's probably.
That's right. You're right. I remember exactly where that comes from. All
Mhm.
right. Well, we're coming up to that in a couple of weeks. So
Yeah.
uh we'll be remembering that too. So okay, so finally, there was an interesting and comforting experience about the insignificance of the world of time. And then this is Helen. There are also some brief periods during which shifts in time awareness took place. Perhaps the most compelling of these happened one evening while I was brushing my hair, deciding I needed a haircut and feeling anything but inspired. Suddenly, I saw my life symbolized by a golden line stretching infinitely backward and infinitely forward. The time interval representing my present life seemed so incredibly tiny that it could easily have been overlooked entirely unless one looked very carefully for it along the line. Then one could see a minuscule dip before the line continued. I clasped my hands in real delight. What can it possibly matter what happens in this little and meaningless blink of time?
Blip.
I asked myself in happy amazement. What were you going to say?
Or just like blip, like a little blip on the
Yep,
radar.
yep, yep, yep. What can possibly have any meaning in that? I asked myself in happy amazement. It seems so long and important while you're in it, but in less than an instant, it's as if it never happened. I was certain of this for several minutes, during which it seemed as if a great weight had been lifted from my mind. The certainty had gone by the time I told Bill about it, although I still felt, quote, I saw eternity the other night.
Mhm.
This really, when I have experiences, and I do, and I'm sure you all do too, um, how long does it take from recognizing I'm having an experience to thinking of how I'm going to tell the story about it to someone? you know, uh,
Mhm.
I'm having an experience. Oh gosh, wait till I tell this person about how this happened and what this is. And then the experience goes away, and now all you have is the story, and it's just the blip. So
Mhm.
yeah. Uh, the notion continues that all of our experiences in the world are nothing more than a minuscule dip, so incredibly tiny in the line of eternity recurred in the course with the phrase tiny tick of time. And that's in text chapter 26, section 5. A parallel passage in the course, which remained until Helen and I went through it together for the last time, was taken out by Helen under Jesus's instruction. I never fully understood why, nor did Helen, although she was quite clear about its coming out. It appeared in what is now chapter 19 in the text in the section called The Unreality of Sin. It fell between the words, and when correction is completed, time is eternity, and the Holy Spirit can teach you how to look on time differently. Okay, here it is in its entirety as Helen took it down. So this is not in the course, apparently, because Jesus asked them to take it out. I bet it's in some other versions of the course, though, because other people decided that they didn't like Jesus telling them to take it out and decided.
Probably that 900-page version that the Circle of Atonement publishes.
Yes.
Robert Pierce.
It's like, okay. Anyway, enough of that.
I'm guessing because I haven't read it, but
I'm sure it is because, and it's probably in the Hewlin. I think I might have one of those around here.
okay.
In fact, I know I do the one they call the original edition. I will look and see if it's in there. But here it is, here in its entirety, as Helen took it down. Time is like a downward spiral that seems to travel down from a long, unbroken line along another plane, but which in no way breaks the line or interferes with its smooth continuousness. Along the spiral, it seems as if the line must have been broken, but at the line, its wholeness is apparent. Everything seen from the spiral is misperceived, but as you approach the line, you realize that it was not affected by the drop into another plane at all. But from this plane, the line seems discontinuous. And this is but an error in perception, which can be easily corrected in the mind, although the body's eyes will see no change. The eyes see many things the mind corrects, and you respond not to the eye's illusions, but to the mind's corrections. You see the line as broken, and as you shift to different aspects of the spiral, the line looks different. Yet in your mind is one, the Holy Spirit, who knows it is unbroken and forever changeless. So this is a part that apparently was taken out. And I'm going to actually look in my little book one here I have. And let's see. All right. So it's in the section called The Unreality of Sin. All right. And I will actually let you read.
Okay. Well, there's actually just one more little paragraph in this chapter. And
Okay.
I'll just.
All right.
And it basically says, before we turn to the actual scribing of A Course in Miracles, we first examine in the next chapter the group of letters Helen wrote to Bill during the summer period. Actually, it's a good preface for the next chapter. And then there's a footnote on page 130 just before that that says, to ease possible confusion, I'm writing out the numbers of chapters referred to in the text of the course while retaining the Arabic numbers when I refer to the chapters of this book. Okay, so I think the version I have of Abstinence from Felicity, this printed version, was written before, might have been before the second edition of the course, which just basically has page numbers rather than the annotation. Yeah.
Okay. So that's why that.
So that's probably not too relevant for most people that have newer
Okay.
editions. So now we're in chapter 6. Should we just go ahead and start in on that?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, yeah. Helen's letters to Bill, summer 1965. Yes. Thinking back, I think I was 11 in 1965. Okay. During the 7.5 years that date from Bill's "There Must Be Another Way" speech to the end of the course's scribing, there was a period when Helen and Bill's relationship seemed to change for the better. There survive a series of letters Helen wrote to Bill in the summer of 1965, and some and some journal notes that Bill kept in the late summer and early fall of 1966. From these letters and journal entries, it is clear how hard Helen and Bill worked in applying the principles they were learning from Jesus. Quick aside, I'm thinking, I think Tam Morgan now is the the custodian of a huge amount of material. I think probably occupying multiple storage units that was inherited from Gloria giving Ken's backlog. I think a large part of it to Tam, and also her own mother stuff, as well as which many things that were sort of inherited from Helen and Bill. So the FIP archives in Northern California have probably a ton of this kind of stuff that is, the backlog of material that's just probably too voluminous for anyone to try to go through. But anyway, but they're keeping it for future generations and trying to go through it as they can. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I just looked in the one that they call the original edition of A Course in Miracles that's put out by the Course in Miracles Society, and yet those two paragraphs are in chapter 19, section 5.
Oh, okay.
So they did put it back in.
Okay. Well, the downward spiral certainly would apply. I mean, that metaphor certainly applies to the spin we can get ourselves in, having learned how to do departure stalls and recover from spins when I got my pilot's license. Probably my least favorite experience because it's pretty scary. But the downward spiral is kind of like the dark night of the soul, when we start taking ego's propaganda more seriously than usual, and if we get fixated on that, it's like, oh my gosh, we can get ourselves in quite a seemingly unrecoverable state. But unlike a flat spin in an airplane, which at some point there's no way to recover from, the Holy Spirit is always there to help us recover from any downward spiral that we might have put ourselves in. But we just have to choose that. We have to say to ourselves, oh, I could see peace instead of this, and I'm not upset for the reason I think. Right?
Yeah. And it's really interesting when I'm thinking about it, because I often think when I'm with myself and other people, we think that we've forgiven a certain situation or a certain thing, and then it comes up again.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, oh geez, am I falling down? Have I forgot? But no, really, it is like a spiral. So in a spiral, if you're going around, it depends on horizontal or vertical, but you always end up, you hit the same point every time you go around one revolution of the spiral.
Right.
You'll hit this point, and so you may have the same thing recur over and over, the same disappointment in love or financial problem, or worry about your health or your children or the world state or whatever, and you think, well, gee, I thought I forgave all that already. But because you're spiraling, you can't just drop everything. I mean, if you could just drop everything, you would no longer continue to be in the spiral, and you would be just going in a direct vertical. But because of our special ability to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, we continue on a spiral. Because we can't give up completely the revolution. Anyway, enough of that.
Well, no, actually, I think that's a really helpful topic, because I as you probably have recalled, I really like geometric metaphors, and a spiral, particularly a helical spiral, because it's a three-dimensional one, really gives us some interesting metaphors. And if you think about our planet rotating the sun, we usually think of the sun as being stationary. It's kind of like we think of the sun as we move from the Ptolemaic view to the Copernican view. I think that's the right two astronomers who made it, changed from a geocentric to a heliocentric model of our everyday reality. And so now we think that Earth goes around the sun rather than the sun going around the Earth. But if you really think about the sun going around the Milky Way galaxy in a very long stretch of time, I don't know if it's the precession of the equinox is 26,000 years, something. I don't know, maybe that may not be the right number, but anyway, that's what sticks in my mind as one possible candidate. Not knowing galactic rotation speeds and where we're at in that giant dream of stars, but our path really on Earth, a much better approximation to going around and around in an ellipse, is really sort of like a slightly eccentric, as an elliptical helical spiral. So we're actually going through the galaxy in a spiral fashion, so to speak, or going through space within the galaxy in a spiral fashion. And who knows how many other cycles within cycles within cycles we're going through, and as other galactic interactions and all that kind of stuff. But the point of it is that we have such a limited view, and I think Helen's story about the golden line and her little blip on the radar part of it was just such a small thing. The more we look at the cosmic perspective, and we can use the astronomical ones as a metaphor, but I think the challenge is that there's so much empty space and so much apparent darkness, and even the science saying that there's so much dark matter, which of course metaphysically we could respond with Bill Murray's cliche of "it just doesn't matter." But the idea of a spiral is kind of interesting because I'm thinking of probably the most familiar example, since this chapter we're just starting to read, is the summer of 1965. You can think of each of the 4 seasons that we go through every year as having, different qualities and aspects and attributes and specifics and particulars that we go through. And each particular we seem to have special relationships, special love and hate for each season, special love, hate, thoughts about holidays and anniversaries and birthdays and things that happen every year, every 4 years, or all the different things that seem to come up periodically and rhythmically. Those can be, and I put it in my chapter on rhythm in this second book I wrote because it was one of the hermetic laws of rhythm. Those can be opportunities to either entrench ourselves more and more fully in the ego thought system by reinforcing with each cycle the depressing idea that we're limited by form, and by our dreams of specificity and particularity and partialness. Or we can use each archetypal reoccurrence as we go around those seeming circles, but really a helical spiral return points, as an opportunity to say, well, I can now look more deeply with the Holy Spirit at the contents of my mind projected out of the world, and use each specific as an opportunity to say, wow, I can trust more deeply. I can allow the guidance in my mind, that inner kindness teacher, to lead me more, to adhere to that more diligently, and not within like a white knuckled grip, but it's really letting go of our grip on the ego that is a complete relaxation that allows us to trust more.
That's beautiful. And talk about a grip, think about it. We are rotating at about 1,000 miles an hour.
Uh-huh.
And not only are we rotating, but we are also, as you said, moving out, horizontal or vertical, it doesn't really matter, but because of the fact that our solar system is a part of something that is moving outward from the central point of what we call the Big Bang, or the tiny mad idea. And so we're moving outward at an incredible speed also. It seems like slow, but really I can't remember, and maybe you might know how fast.
17,000 miles an hour, something like that comes to mind.
Yeah. So 70,000 miles an hour, and 1,000 miles. We're just like in this whirligig. And it's a wonder we don't fly off. But I guess, centrifugal force or gravity or whatever you want to call it, is holding us on here. I don't know. But it's just a very funny thing when you think about it. But yeah, we're not just standing still here in a little place in space. We're actually moving very quickly in a spiral. And as you were pointing out, we are spiraling across the universe. And so that's really interesting.
I
Okay.
just Googled it and put it in the chat. The sun, Earth, and the entire solar system are also in a motion, in addition to or heliocentric motion, orbiting the center of the Milky Way at a blazing 140 miles a second.
Oh,
Even
wow.
even at this great speed, though, our planetary neighborhood still takes about 200 million years to make one complete orbit, a testament to the vast size of our home galaxy. Okay, so the 26,000, give or take, years is the precession of the equinoxes. That's I guess the accounting for the sun's or the Earth's wobble on its axis that points to a different pole star every, and it returns to the same place about every 25,000, 26,000 years, something like that. So right now it's Polaris, 12,000 years ago, and 13,000 years from now, or something, give or take, it'll be Vega, the star Vega, and then it goes back to Polaris, and it's that kind of a thing.
Oh,
But
well, it's there in
so
Vega.
there's all these wobbles and cycles within cycles, and it's just one big loop-de-loop dream.
Yeah, loop-de-loop.
Yeah.
Circles within circles and wheels within wheels.
Yeah, we've only got a couple of minutes before we get into chapter 6 full bore. I thought maybe I could read, since we talked about spirals, and I have a chapter in my second book on the Hermetic law of rhythm. And if you want, I could read a couple of the quotes that I found.
Love that. And yeah, I can't believe it's like 9:23 already. Holy crap. Okay.
So anyway, there's 5 Hermetic laws in the book called the Kabbalion that I wrote about. Actually, it was 2012, coming up on 12 years ago, that I, for the 100th anniversary of this book called the Kabbalion, I published a book called the Geometry Code, and it's all about really the non-dual metaphysics of the Course, and how we can use anything, including geometry, including these metaphysical laws that were handed down from Hermes Trismegistus of Egyptian lore. But those 7 laws are mentalism, that all is mind, everything is mental, correspondent, everything corresponds to everything else. And then there's vibration, polarity, rhythm, which is what I'm about to read a little bit of, and then cause and effect, and gender or generation. So anyway, I just had some opening remarks that were in the form of quotes in that chapter on rhythm. And so this one was kind of a fun one. I juxtaposed 2 quotes, one from Gilda Radner as Rosanna Dana on Saturday Night Live. And the second one was from Gene Bogart, who was the moderator and host of Gary Renard's podcast for many years. So Gilda's quote was, "Well, Jane, it just goes to show you it's always something. If it ain't one thing, it's another." And then Gene Bogart's rebuttal, not necessarily directly to Gilda, but it seemed to fit really nicely, was, "It's all nothing." So the ego, as each thing goes around in the cycle, the helical review of the trivial minutia of our lives, that we make up all these different things to push our buttons, and then we say, "Oh well, I forgot about that one. No, now that's come up again." Whether it's an annual basis or a weekly or a monthly or every decade, it doesn't matter what the frequency is, right? The rhythmic pattern. But it's always something. It's always something that is outside myself that's interrupting my peace. And then Gene's rebuttal is, "Well, it's always nothing," or the Bill Murray response. It just doesn't matter. But we do need to take everything that seems to matter and ask Holy Spirit for his interpretation, rather than ego's misinterpretation. And then I put a quote from the Kabbalion, which is the law of rhythm. And in parentheses, I put flow, non-resistance, surrender is courage, and the keyword beauty. The 5th of the 7 laws or principles is given the name rhythm in the Kabbalion, along with the phrase, "Everything flows out and in, everything has its tides, all things rise and fall, the pendulum swing manifests itself in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. And then I have another few quotes here that I thought fit nicely. And it's really, habit patterns, I think, really fit the idea of rhythm, of developing the consistent pattern over and over and over again. Just like, the classic movie Groundhog Day, it's like, so how about becoming essence superconductors, going with the inner flow? And then I got a quote from Artin in Gary's book, Disappearance of the Universe. Instead of judging automatically, you will forgive automatically. And then shortly thereafter, the proper response to any situation is always love. And that ties into something that I know Ken Wapnick uses quite a bit of, is when we experience a call for love or an expression of love, in either case, the proper response is to return that love in response. And then this one's from Tom Carpenter on Dialogue on Awakening. The first step toward healing your mind is to avoid judging yourself. And I think that's something that we just have to practice over and over and over again. So, and then I just had, if I got a few more seconds here, I wrote, like all the Hermetic laws or principles, this one, rhythm, can be used either by the fragmenting thought system of the ego or by the non-dualistic thought system of our real self. We've trained ourselves from day one to look outside, not that there is such a thing as an outside, and emphasize what appears to come our way, the tidal flood of experiences that come and go to and fro in endless variations. And then it goes on from there. But anyway, I just thought I'd share a little bit of that. Yeah.
I love that. And of course, that's from Bruce's book, The Geometry Code. And
Yep.
That's available on, if you go to his website, which is acimblog.com, right?
Yep.
And,
or you can just go to geometrycode.com.
Geometrycode.com.
That's even simpler. Yeah.
Find out how strange our friend's mind actually works. And by the way, did I say happy birthday to you?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was had a good one. It's been a couple of weeks, but it's that season. So
yeah, it's your birthday season. So
yeah.
I just another friend had a birthday today, and I'm like, hey, Bruce's birthday, but it was right around my grandson's birthday is on the 2nd, so I knew it was right around there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
once again,
so
I think we're all set up to read chapter 6. We just really only got a paragraph into it. So
yeah, we're gonna start back at that. So,
yeah, great. Okay, well, look forward to that. And as always, really love chatting with you about the course every week, Lynn, and have a great week.
You too, Bruce. Blessings to you and Nancy, and I hope you're enjoying your time on in the desert.
Thanks.
I'm trying to shut off this live stream now, and how about I just close that?
Have a great week all. Bye for now.
All right, bye for now, sweetheart.